John had seen many strange worlds in his life as a space explorer, but nothing could have prepared him for this one. The moment his small scout ship pierced the atmosphere, the sky turned from black to a swirling mix of purples and oranges, streaked with clouds that seemed to shimmer like molten metal. The sensors were going haywire, warning him of extreme energy fluctuations, but he was too focused on keeping the ship steady to care. One miscalculation, one small mistake, and he would be lost in the atmosphere forever. The crash was violent, but somehow he survived. His ship spun across a valley of jagged crystal cliffs and landed with a deafening crash into what seemed like a shallow river of glowing liquid. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and John felt the sharp sting of glass shards cutting his hands. He crawled out, his lungs burning from the thin, alien air. He had survived countless dangers in deep space, but this planet felt different. It was alive. The air hummed with a strange energy that vibrated against his bones, almost as if the world itself was watching him. He surveyed the area. Towering crystal trees grew like giants from the glowing ground, their branches twisting into impossible shapes. Rivers of liquid light ran in winding paths, and strange floating insects made tiny sparks as they passed through the air. It was beautiful, yes, but beautiful did not mean safe. In the distance, he saw shadows moving too quickly, too fluidly to be ordinary creatures. Something watched him. Cautious, he began exploring, his boots crunching on the hard crystal soil. He needed shelter, water, and information. His scanner picked up faint life readings ahead, small, fast-moving blips that seemed almost invisible. He crouched and moved closer, and that's when he saw them. Tiny beings no taller than his hand, scurrying in organized chaos among miniature crystal huts. Their bodies shimmered faintly like the air, almost blending perfectly with their surroundings. They had delicate wings like translucent petals and bright, intelligent eyes that widened in terror as they noticed him. John froze. He didn't want to scare them. He raised his hand slowly in a gesture of peace, murmuring softly, "I'm not here to hurt you." The creatures paused, their tiny bodies trembling, unsure if he was friend or foe. Before he could make any further moves, a deep, guttural roar echoed across the valley. The ground shook, and the tiny villagers scattered in panic. From behind the crystal cliffs, a monstrous creature emerged. It was enormous compared to them, a hulking mass of jagged scales and jagged teeth that dripped a glowing, acidic saliva. Its eyes glowed red, and its claws tore through the crystal soil as it advanced. This was no ordinary predator. This was something that could easily wipe out the entire village in minutes. The villagers screamed in their high-pitched, melodic voices. They darted into tunnels beneath their huts, trying to escape the creature's wrath. John's instincts took over. He didn't know the physics of this predator, didn't know its weaknesses, but he knew one thing: he couldn't just watch. He grabbed his plasma rifle from the wreck of his ship. The weapon hummed with energy in his hands. He aimed at the beast, but realized shooting it might destroy the village as well. He needed a plan. He quickly scanned the terrain. Glowing rivers, crystal outcroppings, uneven ground. It could all be used to his advantage. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Hey, over here!" The creature turned toward him, roaring even louder, and charged. John ran, dodging between crystal pillars, luring the gravel maw. The villagers called it that later, but for now he just knew it was deadly, toward a narrow canyon. The beast was faster than him, but the canyon walls were too close for its massive body. As it lunged, John tripped and slid into a small gap, barely avoiding its crushing claws. Sparks flew from the crystals as it clawed at the walls. The tiny villagers watched from above, their tiny faces filled with awe. They had never seen anything like this, something so large, so strong, fighting their enemy so fearlessly. It was a human, a being who could have ignored them entirely, yet chose to fight for their lives. John scrambled up a crystal ledge, found a precarious overhang, and carefully dropped rocks into the path of the creature. The creature roared in frustration, its claws scraping the rocks aside. John noticed a natural trap, a deep ravine partially covered by thin crystal sheets. If he could lure the gravel maw there, it might break through and become trapped. He ran across the thin bridges, jumping at the last moment, the beast following blindly. With a final leap, John landed safely on solid ground, and the gravel maw crashed through the fragile crystals, falling into the deep ravine with a thunderous roar. Dust and crystal shards rained down. For a tense few moments there was silence. Then faint cries of relief echoed from above. The tiny villagers cautiously peeked out. John exhaled, exhausted. His muscles ached, his heart pounded, but he had done it. He had saved them. At night, the village elders approached him. They were no taller than his hand, their wings shimmering in the soft glow of the bioluminescent crystal trees. They spoke in melodic tones he could barely understand at first. Lyra, the daughter of one elder, stepped forward. Her eyes were wide and curious, not afraid, even though she was no bigger than his palm. Through gestures and broken translations using his ship's translator, John understood their gratitude. They offered him food, small glowing fruits that tasted faintly sweet and tangy, and a place to rest. But there was more. One elder bowed deeply and gestured to Lyra. John realized that, according to their customs, he had earned a special honor. He felt uncomfortable. He had never thought about marriage, relationships, or bonds beyond camaraderie and survival. Yet the villagers' eyes were filled with trust, admiration, and hope. They believed that by offering Lyra, they were sealing a bond that ensured the human who had saved them would always be part of their world. For the first time in years, John felt the weight of responsibility not just for himself, but for others, tiny, fragile beings who had no one else to protect them. He agreed to stay the night, not because of obligation, but because he wanted to understand their world. As he lay under the glowing canopy of crystal trees, listening to the hum of the planet and the tiny, soothing chirps of the villagers, he realized something profound. The universe was vast, full of dangers, but also full of unexpected connections. Here, on a tiny planet with tiny people, he had found a purpose far beyond exploration or survival. He had found a reason to fight, to care, and maybe, just maybe, to belong. The night passed slowly. John heard whispers in the alien tongue, soft songs of gratitude and reverence. Lyra visited him briefly, standing on the edge of his makeshift bed. She studied him with curious eyes, her small hands clasped together. No words were exchanged, but the connection was there, a bond born from bravery and trust, fragile but undeniable. Morning brought new challenges. The village was still vulnerable, their homes delicate and their resources scarce. John knew that the gravel maw was not the only threat on this planet. Other predators, environmental hazards, and the mystery of why this planet existed at all would test him. But for the first time, he felt ready, not alone, but with a people who had welcomed him into their lives despite the vast differences between them. He stood at the edge of the village, surveying the landscape once more. The crystal forest stretched endlessly, glowing rivers winding like veins across the land. Somewhere out there, more dangers lurked, waiting to test his skills, courage, and heart. But John smiled faintly. He had faced death, protected the defenseless, and earned the trust of beings far smaller and stranger than himself. He was ready for whatever came next. And deep down, he knew that tiny Lyra, with her sharp mind and unwavering courage, would be by his side when the next challenge came. The bond had begun, fragile as it was, but stronger than anything he had felt in years of wandering the stars. John had arrived as a stranger. By the night's end, he had become a protector, a hero, and perhaps, unknowingly, a part of something much bigger than himself. A story of bravery, trust, and the extraordinary potential of a human willing to stand for those who could not stand for themselves. The morning light spilled across the village like liquid gold, reflecting off the crystal trees and the glowing rivers that wound through the valley. John woke to the soft hum of life all around him. The tiny villagers moved carefully through their homes, tending to small gardens, repairing fragile crystal huts, and sharing whispered conversations that floated through the air like tiny sparks. He could hear Lyra's voice, melodic and soft, giving instructions to the others as they worked. Even in this world so small and alien, leadership and purpose were clear, and Lyra carried it effortlessly. John rose and stretched, flexing sore muscles from the previous day's battle with the gravel maw. He realized that despite the pain, a strange satisfaction filled him. He had survived, yes, but more importantly, he had earned the trust of these tiny beings. And somehow he felt that trust stretching beyond just gratitude. It was respect, admiration, even something closer to friendship. Lyra approached him, her delicate wings catching the light. She moved with quiet confidence, and though she was smaller than his hand, her presence was commanding. She carried a small basket filled with strange fruits that glowed faintly in the soft morning light. She offered it to him, her tiny hands extended, and John smiled, taking a piece. The taste was unlike anything he had known, sweet, tangy, and a little electric. He realized that this world, dangerous though it might be, was beautiful in ways he had never imagined. He spent the morning helping the villagers repair the damage left by the gravel maw. Their crystal huts were fragile but intricate, delicate constructions that seemed almost impossible for such tiny beings to create. John marveled at their ingenuity. He used scraps from his ship to reinforce their structures without damaging the delicate beauty of the crystals. He rigged small traps and warning systems to alert the villagers of danger, improvising with his human knowledge of engineering and physics. The villagers watched him closely, absorbing every action. Lyra stayed by his side, asking questions, making suggestions, and testing his ideas. Though she was small, her mind was sharp, analytical, and fearless. She pointed out weaknesses in his designs, and John found himself impressed again and again by her intelligence. She did not see him as a giant protector, just as a partner in solving problems, and that perspective made him respect her even more. By afternoon, a sense of calm had settled over the village. Children played near the glowing rivers, their laughter like tiny chimes. The adults worked diligently, and John took a moment to watch them, feeling a deep sense of connection to these beings. They were not merely fragile, they were resilient, clever, and courageous. He realized that human strength and courage were not the only measure of bravery. Here, even the smallest beings carried immense courage within their tiny frames. John's peace was interrupted by Lyra, who tugged at his sleeve urgently. She led him to a vantage point where the valley opened into a wider expanse. In the distance, a shadow moved across the crystal terrain. John's scanner picked up a large, irregular energy reading. The gravel maw was not gone. It had survived the fall into the ravine. Worse, it was returning, hungrier and more determined than before. The villagers froze in terror, their small bodies trembling. Lyra stood firm, her eyes bright and determined. She spoke quickly to the others in their musical language, and John realized she was organizing them, coordinating their positions, assigning tasks, and preparing them for defense. She turned to John, pointing at the creature's path. Her meaning was clear. They would not run. They would fight. John nodded. He admired her bravery, and in that moment he understood why the elders had offered her to him. Not out of obligation, but because she was extraordinary even by alien standards. Her courage matched his own, and together they could face the threat before them. The next hours were a blur of preparation. John taught the villagers to use improvised weapons, simple but effective, combining their natural agility with human tactics. They practiced quick maneuvers, setting small traps along the paths that led to their village, and reinforcing key structures to withstand the gravel maw's attacks. Lyra was an exceptional pupil, quickly grasping every tactic and improving upon them, her mind working like a finely tuned machine. As evening approached, the villagers gathered around John. They trusted him now, looked to him for guidance, yet they were not blindly obedient. They asked questions, offered suggestions, and challenged his ideas. John realized that these tiny beings, delicate though they were, had wisdom and ingenuity that rivaled any humans. He began to see the battle not just as a fight for survival, but as a test of unity and cooperation between different species. Night fell, and with it came tension. The gravel maw was near, its presence felt in the trembling ground and the low, guttural growls that echoed through the valley. John and Lyra stood side by side on a crystal ledge overlooking the village. He showed her how to use the small energy traps he had built, explaining the timing and placement, and she absorbed it instantly, her bright eyes focused and determined. "You understand faster than anyone I've ever trained," John said quietly, a hint of admiration in his voice. Lyra smiled, a small curve of her delicate lips. "We have to protect our home," she replied simply, her tone carrying more strength than words could express. John realized then that bravery was not measured by size or strength, but by the willingness to stand against impossible odds. The gravel maw attacked under the cover of darkness, its massive body moving with terrifying speed. The first wave of traps slowed it, but it adapted quickly, its intelligence surprising John. He and Lyra directed the villagers in precise movements, guiding them to strike weak points and lure the creature into prepared zones. Crystals shattered, sparks flew, and the glowing rivers boiled where the creature stepped too heavily. Yet the villagers moved with coordination and courage, trusting John and each other implicitly. Hours passed in a chaotic blur of light and sound. The gravel maw was relentless, but so were they. John found himself exhilarated not just by the danger, but by the cooperation between species, the tiny aliens Lyra and himself, working together in perfect harmony despite the differences in size, strength, and perspective. Every small victory, every trap that worked, felt monumental. The villagers cheered softly in their musical tones whenever the creature stumbled, their spirits lifting despite the danger. Eventually, John and Lyra managed to corner the gravel maw in a narrow canyon, where the walls were too close for its massive frame to maneuver. The final trap was set, a combination of human ingenuity and alien design. The villagers moved swiftly, placing rocks, glowing barriers, and small energy traps precisely where they were needed. John stood ready, his rifle humming with power, and Lyra directed the final steps, her tiny wings trembling with effort and excitement. When the gravel maw lunged, it fell perfectly into their trap. Energy pulses, weighted rocks, and controlled crystal collapses worked in unison to immobilize the beast. Its roars filled the canyon, echoing like thunder, but it could not escape. Exhausted, battered, and trapped, it finally succumbed to their combined efforts. The valley fell silent except for the quiet, victorious whispers of the villagers. John knelt to catch his breath, his body aching, but a sense of accomplishment filled him. He looked at Lyra, who hovered close, her wings flickering in the dim light. She smiled, not triumphantly but with quiet satisfaction. They had done it together. The villagers approached slowly, their eyes wide with awe and gratitude. They had not only survived, but had witnessed something extraordinary. A human who risked his life for beings far smaller and weaker, and the courage of a tiny girl who led her people with intelligence and heart. John realized that their offer of Lyra's hand was not a simple tradition. It was a recognition of shared bravery, respect, and unity. The night ended with celebration, small fires glowing among the crystal trees, tiny music filling the air. The villagers danced and sang, a mesmerizing blend of melody and movement, and John felt a deep sense of belonging. He was still an outsider in size and origin, but he was part of something bigger now, a family united by trust and courage. Lyra approached him again, holding a small crystal in her hands. It was a gift, a token of gratitude and perhaps something more. She placed it gently in his palm. John felt warmth spread through him, not from the energy of the crystal, but from the connection it represented. "I will stay," John whispered, more to himself than to her. "I will protect your village, I will protect you." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with understanding. It was not a promise to a tradition or a reward, but a promise to something far greater, the life and spirit of a people who had trusted him completely. As he lay down that night under the glowing crystal trees, listening to the gentle hum of the planet and the quiet whispers of his new friends, John realized that he had discovered something far more valuable than exploration or survival. He had discovered trust, connection, and the extraordinary potential of a human heart willing to stand for others. The bond between him and Lyra and between him and the village was growing, fragile yet strong, tiny yet monumental. The universe beyond this crystal valley was still vast, filled with dangers and mysteries. But John felt ready now, no longer alone. He had allies, friends, and perhaps even a reason to care for more than just himself. The gravel maw was defeated, but countless challenges awaited. And when those challenges came, he would not face them alone. He would face them with Lyra, with the villagers, and with the courage that humans were known for, a courage that could overcome the impossible. And in that quiet, glowing night, John understood the first lesson of this strange, tiny world. Strength was not measured by size or firepower alone, but by courage, heart, and the willingness to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. The village lay under a tense, silent sky. The crystal trees, which normally shimmered softly in the night, seemed to hold their breath. John stood at the edge of the village, scanning the surrounding valley with his scanners. He could feel it before the devices even picked up anything. The gravel maw was coming back. Stronger, hungrier, and smarter than before. Its massive form had survived the traps and falls of earlier battles. Now, it sought revenge. The villagers moved quietly around him, preparing the defenses he had helped build over the past days. Tiny barricades, crystal traps, and energy pulses were positioned strategically throughout the village, but John knew these alone would not be enough. The gravel maw was too powerful, and if it breached the outer defenses, the village would be destroyed. He turned to Lyra, who hovered beside him, her wings beating softly in the cool night air. Her eyes glimmered with determination, reflecting the lights of the crystal trees. "We need a plan," John said. "One mistake and we all die." Lyra nodded. She quickly gathered the village leaders and volunteers, moving like a conductor directing an orchestra. Together, John and Lyra walked through the village, checking each trap, testing every barricade, and refining their strategy. Even in the darkness, the tiny villagers moved with precision and confidence, following her instructions while trusting John's guidance. The gravel maw's first attack came like a thunderclap. The ground trembled as the creature emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing red and its teeth snapping with hunger. It moved faster than John had anticipated, tearing through the outer defenses with shocking strength. Tiny villagers scattered in panic, but Lyra's voice rang out, clear and commanding. She directed them into safe positions while John used his plasma rifle to keep the creature distracted, targeting weak points he had observed during the last battle. The first few minutes were chaotic. The gravel maw slammed into crystal huts, sending shards flying through the air. Energy traps flashed and detonated, slowing it momentarily, but it quickly adapted. John realized that brute force alone would not defeat this creature. He needed to outsmart it. He turned to Lyra, whispering urgently, "We need to trap it in the canyon again like last time, but this time we need a stronger plan." Lyra's mind raced. She scanned the terrain in her sharp, intelligent way, noting the ridges, the narrow passages, and the unstable crystal formations. "We can lure it toward the river bend," she said. If we collapse the crystal bridge there, it will fall into the deep ravine. But we must time it perfectly. John nodded, impressed by her quick thinking. Together, they coordinated the villagers to execute the plan. The next hour was a tense dance of strategy and courage. John acted as bait, drawing the gravel maw toward the canyon, while Lyra guided the villagers to set up the final trap. Tiny, energy pulses and weighted crystals were arranged precisely. Every movement had to be timed perfectly. A single mistake, and the gravel maw would crush the village and everyone in it. As the creature charged, John ran across the narrow bridge over the glowing river, luring it closer. His heart pounded in his chest. The gravel maw's claws scraped the crystal below him, sending sparks flying. Its roar shook the air, and he could see its red eyes locked onto him with relentless focus. He dodged and jumped, feeling the heat of its breath and the force of its weight just inches behind him. Lyra hovered above, signaling the villagers to activate the traps. Tiny hands pushed crystals into place, released energy pulses, and coordinated the final collapse. The villagers moved as one, their small bodies working together flawlessly under her guidance. John marveled at their courage. Despite their size, they were fearless, trusting their lives to him and to each other. At the perfect moment, John leaped to the side, drawing the gravel maw onto the weakened bridge. The crystals snapped under its massive weight, and the bridge collapsed. The creature fell into the ravine with a deafening roar, thrashing wildly but trapped. John and the villagers watched, holding their breath as the gravel maw struggled. Energy pulses from their traps combined with the falling crystals pinned it down, finally immobilizing it. Its red eyes dimmed as it let out a final, defeated roar. The village erupted in celebration. Tiny voices sang in their melodic language, laughter and music filling the night air. Villagers hugged each other, lifted into the air by joy and relief. John crouched down, exhausted but smiling as Lyra approached him, her wings flickering softly. She landed on his shoulder, small and delicate but fierce and proud. "You did it," she said simply, her voice carrying the weight of the village's gratitude. John shook his head, looking around at the villagers. "We did it," he corrected. "All of us." "Together," Lyra nodded, and for a moment the two of them shared a quiet understanding. The bond between them had grown stronger, forged in danger, trust, and mutual respect. The next days were filled with rebuilding and celebration. John helped repair the village, using his knowledge to make their structures stronger without destroying their delicate beauty. Lyra continued to guide her people, now confident in their ability to defend themselves. They worked side by side, human and tiny alien, creating a partnership that went beyond size or species. John also took time to learn about their culture, history, and ways of life. The villagers had traditions, music, and stories that stretched back generations. They taught him how to move through the crystal forests without disturbing the fragile environment, how to use the natural energy of the planet to power simple devices, and how to communicate with them in ways beyond words. John realized that he had entered a world far more complex and beautiful than he had imagined. As he spent more time with Lyra, he began to understand why the elders had offered her hand to him. Not out of obligation, but because she was extraordinary, a leader in her own right, and now his equal in courage and intellect. Their relationship grew naturally, not from tradition but from shared experiences, respect, and the unspoken bond that had formed in the heart of danger. One evening, as the sky turned deep violet and the glowing rivers reflected the stars, Lyra led John to a high cliff overlooking the valley. The village sparkled below them, tiny lights twinkling like stars on the ground. "This is our home," she said softly. "And now, because of you, it is safe." John looked at her, seeing the determination in her eyes, the courage in her small frame, and the wisdom in her gaze. He realized that this world had changed him, made him care about something beyond himself in a way he had never known. They sat together in silence, listening to the hum of the planet and the soft rustling of crystal leaves. John thought about Earth, about his travels through space, about all the battles he had fought and the dangers he had faced. None of it compared to the feeling of protecting a people so small, so fragile, yet so strong in heart and spirit. They had trusted him, believed in him, and now he believed in them. The days that followed were a mixture of recovery, training, and celebration. John taught the villagers advanced strategies for defending the village, while Lyra showed him how to harness the natural energies of their world. Together, they created a system of traps and alarms, combining human ingenuity with alien intelligence. The village became stronger, safer, and more united than ever before. During quiet moments, John and Lyra would sit together, sharing stories and learning from each other. Lyra asked questions about Earth, about human customs, and John explained what he could. In turn, she taught him about the planet's history, the origin of their people, and the mysteries of their environment. They laughed together, planned together, and in their own way fell into a partnership that neither of them fully understood but both deeply valued. One night, as the twin moons rose over the valley, John realized something profound. He had arrived on this planet as a stranger, a lone explorer with no ties, no purpose beyond survival. Yet in just a few days he had become a protector, a friend, and something more. The villagers had accepted him, trusted him, and even offered him a place among them. And Lyra, tiny, brilliant, fearless Lyra, had captured a part of his heart he had not known existed. The gravel maw was gone, defeated by their combined courage and intelligence, but John knew that the universe was far from safe. There would be more threats, more dangers lurking in the shadows of distant stars and alien worlds. Yet for the first time he did not feel alone facing them. He had allies, friends, and a bond that transcended size, species, and tradition. The village continued to thrive. Tiny gardens flourished along the glowing rivers, crystal homes gleamed under the sunlight, and the villagers moved with newfound confidence. John and Lyra worked side by side, guiding, protecting, and learning from each other. The story of the human who had defended a village of tiny aliens spread quietly through their world, becoming a legend not of fear, but of courage, unity, and the extraordinary potential of trust and friendship. As John looked out over the village one last time before night fell, he knew that this was only the beginning. The bond he had formed with Lyra and the villagers was unbreakable, built on bravery, respect, and shared experience. Together, they would face whatever came next: unknown predators, environmental dangers, and the mysteries of a universe far larger than any of them had imagined. And in the quiet glow of the crystal trees, with the stars above and the tiny village below, John finally understood the true meaning of courage. It was not just the strength to fight, but the heart to protect, to care, and to stand for those who could not stand for themselves. And with Lyra by his side, he was ready for anything. The days after the final battle passed in a rhythm of quiet recovery and cautious celebration. The village, once fragile and fearful, had transformed into a place of confidence and unity. Tiny hands repaired crystal huts, tended glowing gardens, and moved with a purpose that reflected their new strength. John worked tirelessly alongside them, his presence a blend of protector, teacher, and friend. Every day brought new lessons, not only in survival, but in understanding the lives and hearts of beings so different from him, yet so remarkably alike in courage and spirit. Lyra was at his side throughout. She moved through the village with a natural authority, guiding her people, planning defenses, and teaching them to harness the strange energies of the planet. Despite her small size, her mind and courage radiated strength. John watched her with a mixture of admiration and quiet wonder. He had seen leaders before, humans and aliens alike, but Lyra's intelligence and instinct for leadership seemed instinctive, as if the planet itself had gifted her this responsibility. One morning, the village elders approached John with solemn expressions, though their eyes carried warmth and gratitude. They spoke in their melodic language, and Lyra translated carefully for him. "You have saved our home," she said. "You have protected our people. In return, we offer you what is most precious to us. We ask you to take Lyra as your partner, not only as a symbol of trust, but as a bond that unites our worlds." John felt a strange mix of surprise, humility, and uncertainty. He had grown close to Lyra, yes, but marriage was something he had never considered in this alien world, especially so quickly. Lyra stepped forward, her tiny form poised and steady. "I will stand by your side," she said, her eyes meeting his without hesitation. "Not because tradition demands it, but because I trust you. I have learned from you, and together we are stronger than any danger that may come." John's chest tightened. He realized that this was more than a formality or a custom. It was an offering of heart, courage, and partnership. He looked at the villagers who had grown to trust him, who had fought and survived alongside him. He thought of the gravel maw, the battles, and the moments when fear threatened to overwhelm them all. He had come to this planet as a wanderer, seeking adventure, yet now he felt something deeper, a sense of belonging he had never known in all his travels. John took a deep breath. "I accept," he said quietly but with certainty. "Not out of duty, but because I care for you, for this village, and for Lyra. I will stay and protect all of you, not as an outsider, but as one of your own." Lyra's small hand touched his, a gesture of trust and connection, and the village erupted into quiet celebration. The preparations for their union were simple yet profound. The villagers, delicate and careful, decorated the crystal trees with glowing flowers and strands of luminescent threads. Tiny fires flickered along the pathways, casting a warm, soft light across the valley. Music, soft and melodic, filled the air as the villagers sang songs of courage, trust, and unity. John watched, moved by the beauty and simplicity of their celebration. Here was a culture that valued heart and courage above all else, a world where bonds were earned through action, not mere words. Lyra guided him through the ceremony, explaining the significance of each gesture, each symbol, and each tradition. John listened intently, fascinated by the depth and meaning embedded in their customs. When it came time to exchange their vows, there were no grand words or promises, only a quiet understanding. They pledged to protect, to support, and to stand together in the face of any challenge. The villagers cheered softly, their voices small but full of joy, and John felt a surge of warmth and belonging unlike anything he had experienced. After the ceremony, the villagers prepared a feast. Tiny fruits, glowing delicacies, and nectar-filled treats were laid out in intricate patterns. John marveled at the care and artistry that went into every dish, tasting flavors unlike anything he had known. Lyra sat beside him, her presence comforting and reassuring. They shared stories of their pasts, of Earth and its vast skies, of the planet and its glowing forests. The connection between them deepened, not as obligation, but as two beings who had faced life and danger together and emerged stronger for it. The following days were filled with exploration and discovery. John led the villagers on small excursions beyond the valley, teaching them about movement, strategy, and survival. In turn, Lyra guided him through the hidden secrets of the planet, glowing caverns, energy-rich plants, and creatures that moved with elegance and purpose. Together, they mapped the territory, learning how to coexist with the world rather than simply survive. One day, while walking along the river of glowing liquid, John paused to look at Lyra. "I never imagined I would find a place like this," he said softly. "A world so small and delicate, yet filled with courage and heart. I never imagined I would meet someone like you." Lyra's eyes sparkled, and she smiled, her tiny hand resting on his arm. "And I never imagined a being like you would care so much for us," she replied. "You see our strengths, not just our size or fragility. That is what makes you extraordinary." John felt a warmth in his chest, a quiet joy that went beyond words. As weeks passed, John and Lyra's bond grew stronger. They trained together, explored together, and shared quiet moments under the glowing crystal canopy. John realized that the universe was vast, full of dangers and mysteries, but here, in this tiny valley, he had found something more valuable than adventure or survival. He had found purpose, trust, and love. The villagers thrived under their guidance. They were stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever before. John watched as tiny children played near the glowing rivers, laughing without fear, and he understood that his presence had changed their lives. He was no longer an outsider. He was a protector, a teacher, and a part of their community. One evening, John and Lyra sat together atop a high cliff overlooking the valley. The twin moons reflected off the crystal trees, casting long, shimmering shadows across the village. John felt a sense of peace he had never known. He had fought for survival, faced incredible danger, and yet here he was, not just alive but fulfilled. Lyra leaned against him, small and fragile yet unyielding, and he realized that this partnership, human and alien, large and small, was a testament to what courage, trust, and unity could achieve. "They will never forget this," John said quietly, looking down at the village. "Our story, the battles, the trust, it will live on," Lyra nodded. "And it will guide them as we guide each other," she replied. John smiled. He understood that the bond he shared with Lyra and the villagers was more than survival. It was a lesson in courage, respect, and the extraordinary potential of a human willing to stand for others. The village continued to grow and thrive. New crystal homes were built, gardens flourished, and the small beings moved with confidence and joy. John and Lyra became symbols of unity, courage, and cooperation, not through force, but through guidance, trust, and example. Visitors from nearby valleys came to see the village, learning from the tiny aliens and their human protector, and the story of bravery spread quietly across the planet. John and Lyra spent quiet nights beneath the glowing crystal trees, listening to the hum of the planet and the soft songs of the villagers. They shared dreams of exploring further, of protecting other villages, and of understanding the mysteries of the universe together. They spoke of Earth, of stars, and of possibilities beyond imagination. In each other they had found companionship, partnership, and love, not because it was offered, but because it was earned through shared courage and mutual respect. Months passed, and life settled into a peaceful rhythm. John taught the villagers new techniques, blending human innovation with alien ingenuity. Lyra continued to lead, her presence a constant source of strength and inspiration. Together, they became not only protectors of the village but also catalysts for growth, learning, and unity. One morning, as John helped a group of villagers repair a crystal bridge, Lyra approached him with a small, glowing crystal. She handed it to him carefully, her tiny fingers brushing his hand. "For you," she said softly, "a reminder of our bond and the courage we share." John took it, feeling the warmth of both the crystal and her intention. He smiled. "I will treasure it," he said, "just as I treasure this world and you." The villagers gathered to celebrate the union of human and alien protector, their voices blending into a symphony of joy, laughter, and song. John watched as tiny hands decorated the village with glowing flowers and luminescent threads, each movement a testament to their trust, gratitude, and hope for the future. Lyra stood beside him, her wings flickering softly, and John felt a sense of completion he had never known. Together they had faced death, danger, and uncertainty. Together they had built trust, defended life, and forged a bond that transcended species, size, and tradition. John understood now that courage was not measured by strength alone, but by heart, empathy, and the willingness to stand for others. And in Lyra, he had found a partner who shared these values, a being small in size but enormous in courage, wisdom, and spirit. As night fell over the valley, the crystal trees shimmered under the twin moons, casting a soft, magical light across the village. John and Lyra stood together at the edge of the river, watching the glowing waters flow and the tiny lights of the village twinkle. They did not speak, for words were unnecessary. Their bond was evident in every glance, every gesture, and every shared moment. John realized that he had found more than a home. He had found family, friendship, purpose, and love. The villagers had not just accepted him. They had trusted him, relied on him, and in doing so, had given him something far greater than survival or adventure. They had given him connection, belonging, and a reason to stand, fight, and live for something beyond himself. And in that glowing, peaceful night, John understood the full meaning of his journey. The universe was vast, dangerous, and full of mysteries, but here, in a tiny village of glowing crystal trees and courageous little beings, he had discovered a truth that would guide him forever. Courage, heart, and trust could overcome any obstacle, and even the smallest beings could teach the greatest lessons. Lyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "We will face whatever comes next," she said. John nodded, smiling. "Together," he replied. And in that moment the world seemed brighter, safer, and filled with endless possibilities. Their story was not just one of survival or adventure. It was a story of unity, courage, and the extraordinary power of humans willing to protect, love, and trust beyond the boundaries of size, species, and fear. And so, the human who had protected a village of tiny aliens, and the brave, brilliant girl he had come to love, stood side by side under the crystal canopy, ready to face the future together, proving that even the smallest worlds could hold the greatest heroes.